Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Help is on the way. Pitt receives a commitment today from Kendall Stanley out of Charlotte, a transfer offensive lineman, played offensive tackle, a really good addition to this offensive line crew that currently Pitt has. I expect Pitt to go after at least 1 to 2 more people. I know right now they're on the verge of getting another commitment from another offensive lineman out of the transfer portal. But it's really big to get a guy like Kendall Stanley. We'll go into that tonight. Obviously, two open-ended questions today. We certainly won't go the full hour like we usually do, but I thought it was a good day to be able to go on live here and talk about a really good commitment for Pitt football. Obviously, as the things get really heated up here, we have the bowl game coming up on Thursday, but this is a really good commitment overall for Pitt. But before we get into it, guys, you guys always know how this starts. The show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Again, two great Pitt men, more importantly, a great small business. Anytime you're able to help out Pitt people, but more importantly, a small business over in the Bethel Park area, anytime you're able to do that, it's always special. More importantly, when it comes to these two individuals, I've known them for a long time. They're truly great people, great customer service. Obviously, when you're in there, go ahead and pick up the Pitt Hail to Pitt Icy Light can. Obviously, a really good design overall, really good partnership there. But more importantly, good people. And anytime you can help out a small business, it's always in the good hands. Obviously, they are season ticket holders to Pitt. They're Alliance 412 members. They do a bunch of work for Pitt overall, and they've done a good job. But more importantly, they're great individual people. And more importantly, the work they do with the community as well is second to none. Go over and see my friends at Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. And of course, the show is also sponsored by Brian Thompson, Thompson Law. Let's see, pull it up here. Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Obviously, with Brian Thompson, not like one of the larger law firms that are out there. He truly cares about your results individually and how you are successful, but more importantly, answering your questions on a day in and day out basis. Me personally, I use Brian for all of my personal needs. Anytime I have a question, Brian takes care of my work, but more importantly, he points me in the right direction if he doesn't have the correct answer or he doesn't have the overall knowledge right then and there. That's what makes Brian special. He cares about you, the individual. You're not a number. You're an individual, and he cares about who you are as a person and how you need to get results for your issue that you need corrected at hand. Obviously, Brian, another Pitt season ticket holder, does a tremendous job with season tickets, but also, too, donating to the Pitt football program. Overall, comes from a tremendous family, incredible individual, someone who I'm lucky to call as a personal friend, but more importantly, someone who takes care of everything that I need to be taken care of when it comes to attorney needs. Again, guys, give them a call at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, guys, if you haven't done so, if you're over on X, we have a lot of people in here tonight from between X and YouTube. Head down below, hit the like button down below. It helps out with the algorithm. If you have not subscribed, if you're over on X, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. But more importantly, if you need your question answered tonight, if you have a question here, down at the bottom, there's a super chat button. Make a small donation to the program, obviously to the podcast. It certainly helps out quite a bit. Certainly helps out the program. I appreciate everyone, as always, with the super chats, and more importantly, all the subscribers, as always. So, obviously, there's a number of comments coming in here now. WRW Pitt, obviously, always in here. Smash the like button and subscribe. Yes, thank you. Adam, much needed O-line help. Obviously, hopefully the next commit has upside as well. It does. And they're going to be working on a number of different athletes. Obviously, right now, Pitt football made their way up to Detroit for the bowl game. Obviously, yesterday they had practice today, had a bunch of different events today as well. But they have now one commitment from here. But obviously, too, right now, I can tell you this from right now, Pitt's doing a really good job on the outset of being able to pick up, obviously, talent they need. We talked about yesterday a number of different misses between a guy like Derek Simmons, who personally, I thought 99% sure he was coming here. Obviously, Oklahoma came with a bag. Well, today, really Pitt came with a bag. Pitt was able to really hold off two really good noticeable programs in terms of offensive linemen. Obviously, Michigan State. Kendall Stanley visited Pitt during the previous week, then obviously went to go visit Michigan State. Luckily, Pitt was able to secure the victory here when it comes to portals and being able to recruit out of the portal. They were able to, one, come in with a tremendous offer overall, being able to hold off Michigan State and Miami, which is a massive factor. Kendall Stanley, 6'5", 305 pounds, can play the offensive tackle position like he did the previous 2 years here. Obviously, he's got 3 years of eligibility left the 1 year out due to an injury. Obviously, he's able to play tackle or guard. Wouldn't be shocked if we see him at the tackle position and one guy slides into the guard position. Obviously, right now you got Bayer at left tackle. I think he can potentially even play guard as well, depending upon what he feels is better for his career. Obviously, B.J. Williams at right guard, Lyndon Cooper at the center position, and you're really going to have battles on the offensive line. Obviously, you still got Jackson Brown, who I think has got tremendous upside, continues to show development. You'll see that in the bowl game. Isaiah Montgomery, I think, too. Those two young guys were able to get valuable reps this year. They're only going to get better. Anybody that you talk to overall. But also, too, anytime you're able to jump on board and get those guys involved, that you obviously have those. But behind them, Caleb Holmes, who's a true freshman this year. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him get some snaps overall in the bowl game. He'll be a redshirt freshman next year. A guy to watch out for now, Kendall Stanley, and another offensive lineman as well. The Reaction Podcast, Big Kitch, what's your prediction on Cade Bell, Eli, and Kyle Lewis all staying at Pitt? Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this stuff right here, man, I don't expect any moves there. I know they have a deal in place right now with Eli obviously being taken care of. They certainly paid, took care of him. Obviously, Kyle Lewis, the same exact thing. But overall, when it comes to the overall talent level, when you look at Pitt, you never know until the end of spring. Right now, the transfer portal is open for people to jump in all the way through December 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Pitt plays on the 26th. They'll have the 27th and the 28th to figure out anybody else who needs to go in there. I don't expect anything crazy. The only one person I would think I'd probably be watching out for overall and just consistently walking through it to see who else is there is Sincere Edwards. I think, we certainly kept the battle for him from a number of different places, especially UCF. Obviously he's down there in the bowl game right now. Obviously, I think it'd be great to keep the rest of this roster together. I expect, obviously, Eli Holstein, who's been a major factor in terms of recruiting as well. Obviously, I think he's just going to get better and better. It'll actually be really good. And I talked to a number of people about this as well. Eli Holstein had one hell of a year when he was healthy, obviously, went through a number of injuries just because of one, offensive line depth, a number of different injuries up front. But a guy who only got first-team reps, really the second portion of the fall camp. Eli Holstein's now going to have an entire spring to work with an upcoming offensive line group that he's going to have, obviously, all the way through the summer, all the way through camp again. That's only going to help him. I think he's going to have another damn good year. I think really build on what he truly had from the previous year. We're going to add in more offensive linemen for this class. I would expect at least one more to two more. I know they're on the verge of getting another offensive line commitment. Also, too, the wide receiver out of Western Carolina, Zion Booker, obviously has offers from Pitt, Virginia Tech, Tulsa, amongst others. Tulsa and Colorado. I know there's a lot of good interest there as well. Pitt's already added one wide receiver recruit, 6'4" wide receiver Deuce. I'm going to say here, had his name here on my list here. Where did I have it here? Yeah, Deuce Spann, 6'4", 208 pounds, earned a starting position at Florida State this previous year. Obviously did not make it to the season because he had an injury, but he did. He was going to be a starter, something to watch out for. Again, a bigger wide receiver in that room. I think the second biggest would be Kenny Johnson, Kenny Johnson will be wide receiver number 1 next year. I think he's a clear front runner in terms of overall talent in that room. I expect him to be a leader going forward overall in that room and what that looks like. I think just when you look at the overall aspect of what Pitt's looking at still, offensive line is still number 1. I expect Pitt to add, obviously, defensive ends. That's going to be another major factor because, obviously, right now you have Jimmy Scott, Sincere Edwards, and really Chief Borders that really focuses out that top 3. I think Pitt will probably add 2, potentially 3 defensive ends, depending upon what the young group looks like. Ty Uhas can play at the defensive tackle position, defensive end position as well. But I expect Pitt to be active there. Obviously, the Utah State defensive end, he certainly has a lot of interest Another guy that we had in there, got his name right here from who I talked to. Oh, yeah, Utah State defensive end Blaine Spires, a guy to watch out for. I think he'd be a tremendous add. He's got a number of different offers. And again, we talked about offensive linemen like Derek Simmons, who went to Oklahoma. Caleb Carter went to Michigan State. So Michigan State took one from us. We took one from them, which is really good overall. Wake Forest offensive lineman Keegan Tross committed to Missouri. He's off the board. But also, too, UAB safety Adrian Maddox will take a visit to Pitt. Obviously, he's got a number of different offers out there as well. So I think overall, when you look at the recruiting board from top to bottom, Pitt's got a number of guys still on the board. You still have guys going into the portal, but also, too, you have 1,700 transfer portal players in there as well. So I think overall, when you look at Pitt, they're obviously making decisive decisions. Obviously, you would have loved to land Derek Simmons before Oklahoma really came in and dropped that that bag. I think that overall he was going to go to Pitt. I was 99% sure he was going to go to Pitt overall. But right now, I think the Pitt's recruiting board is starting to take shape. You're starting to see more and more people come on campus between the wide receiver positions, defensive ends, still have more offensive linemen that they're looking at right now. I think that their board looks good, but you still want to stay consistent and stay really aggressive. Again, we talked about the misses that were currently there right now due to other funds. People, obviously different schools having funds. Right now, Missouri just has a shit ton of money. They got Bo Pribula, the backup quarterback from Penn State. He went there. They obviously got Matthew Zollers out of Western Pennsylvania, quarterback that went there as well. They got a number of different wide receivers. Demarion Folks got a bag from decommitment from Pitt to go to Missouri. So Missouri's playing with house money right now. They got a shit ton of money up there, and their NIL program and their fan base is really involved up there in terms of being productive and in terms of the players they want to bring on board. Overall, it's going to be fun to see, obviously, Pitt play this week. Again, I think right now when you look at it, it's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, a number of different people out between the graduation rate, the transfer portal, but also obviously too holding just some people out that really don't need to play in this football game. It's good to see Donovan McMillan will be playing in this game. You got obviously Biles, Kyle Lewis playing in this game. I mean, the majority of these guys, I think Keith Thompson will be out of this game. I don't think he made the trip. So obviously he'll be out at the middle linebacker position, but that gives you more reps for Rasheem Biles, Kyle Lewis, Brandon George will be playing in this football game. Cameron Lindsay, the 4-star linebacker out of Aliquippa, he'll certainly get reps in this football game as well, so he'll be fun to watch. But overall, it's a number of different factors right now, money being tossed around through the portal. And then obviously, too, number of different guys. Obviously, West Virginia has a number of different guys going to the portal. I know Pitt's reached out to their offensive lineman in specific, Tomas Remak. He's been a 3-year starter, a damn good football player. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up going to Virginia Tech to follow his offensive line coach. He just obviously the former West Virginia offensive line coach just got signed by Virginia Tech. He's now going to be the new offensive line coach there. I wouldn't be shocked to see Tomas Remak go there. Also, too, another offensive lineman to see in that group, Solomon Weedman out of West Virginia, but also, too, Johnny Williams, who is a really upcoming offensive lineman for West Virginia. He also hit the portal. He's certainly had a contact with Pitt as well. So a number of different things here. Obviously, if you are new here, we have more and more people joining the show here. Obviously, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the show, like this video. It certainly helps out with the algorithm. But also, too, if you want to get your comment read on the screen, just down below, super chat button, make a small donation to the podcast, and we'll be able to get it right to the top. Adam, I think Zollers will end up transferring to Pitt in a few years, potentially. But then again, even when he hits the portal, it's another potential for a bag as well. Duke today signed Tulane sophomore quarterback, rated the 7th QB, 71st overall in the portal, 2 years, $8 million. Obviously, Eli worth $2 million. Agree. Pitt, tough guy. He's right there in that market. I know Pitt really took care of him overall. He wants to stay at Pitt. He loves Pitt. Obviously, his family loves Pitt, and he just comes from a great, great family. A tough-nosed, hard kid. Pitt's done a good job of taking care of him. Obviously, until we're all the way through spring camp, and it's going to be, beginning of June, that's when I'll feel comfortable about this roster. Because if there's anything I've learned in college football, things can change on a dime. Players change their minds numerous different times. We've seen numerous drama just in this portal cycle. The portal will open up again after spring camp. They'll probably see players go in the portal after that for guys who don't have playing time. Things change on a dime. I think just kind of that's where we are with college football to this point. Obviously, teams in the college football playoff. Tennessee saw some guys go in the portal today. C.J. Donaldson, obviously Ohio State is still in the college football playoff. They recruited C.J. Donaldson. He commits to Ohio State today. So all these teams are really active at this point. And I think until we conclude fall, spring camp and go into the summer camp with OTAs, that's when I'll start to feel comfortable about Pitt's roster. But right now, I know that right now they have deals with all the guys they need to keep here. I'm very confident in all those guys staying put, and really Pitt getting ready and really ready and prepared, to make a run. And I think also too, I'm going to bring it up here tonight too, because I want to talk about the schedule for next year. When you look at Pitt's overall schedule, let me see here. Pitt football 2025 schedule. Let's see here. I think I'll probably share my screen here with you guys. Number of different football games through here. I think Pitt's got a tough schedule next year, to put it lightly. Let's see here. Before we go into a number of other different transfers of who could be committing here. Let me see here. Quality. Will, I agree. Quality pickup need a lot more reinforcements on the offensive line. Overall, we'll go through the offensive line depth. I think potentially maybe even at most 2 to 3 more. So it'll get you 4 offensive linemen in this class. I think you'll have a depth chart of really 8, 9, 10 guys, and we'll go through that as well. Let me share my screen here with you guys, obviously. Close this. I want to share my screen. Let's see here. All right. So look at it here. Obviously, I think that should be big enough for you guys there. You look at the overall schedule next year, the only thing is left here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's still one game left. I believe that game is going to be filled out by Robert Morris potentially, or a Duquesne on the football schedule. I think, overall the days of wanting to play 11 Power 4 teams, should be over unless something crazy happens with the college football playoff. We've seen a lot of propaganda from guys like, what's his name? Kirk Herbstreit. Obviously, he's been taking a lot of flack here in the last couple of days, obviously, with the outrageous comments about, it's not about win totals anymore. It's about certain teams and how they look. I'm sorry, if you have 3 losses or more in college football, you should not be in the college football playoff. It's that simple. I think anything else is real bullshit at this point, and Kirk's been getting a lot of flack for that. But obviously, you look here at the overall schedule for next year. Central Michigan, obviously, it was good to get them on the schedule with a group of 5 team there. But obviously, you still have at West Virginia. They're certainly going through an influx. They had, 16 guys in the portal now, only 1 returning starter, 7 out of 10 offensive linemen on their roster last year, and no longer on that roster. So they're going through a whole another mix. They picked up some commitments today. They picked up a guy from Tulsa today, a center that Pitt offered as well. I thought it was actually good. All-American Conference center. I think he actually could be potentially pretty good. But you got West Virginia on the schedule, Notre Dame at home. You're at Florida State next year. They paid, what's crazy is from numerous contacts, and I know, but just between Florida State, but obviously too at a school for like Virginia, who was trying to get in contact with him. Tommy Castellanos was benched at Boston College, goes into the portal and gets paid $1.3 million to go be the starter at Florida State. We'll see how that pans out. I think it's another DJU situation. I think Florida State could potentially be on the outside looking in again, but it is Florida State down at Doak Campbell Stadium. So we'll be down there again. That'll be in the first, 3 or 4 games. Then you still have Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's a damn good football team. Brent Key continues to recruit at a high level. If it wasn't for the referees obviously butchering those games, and overall ESPN trying to support Georgia, Georgia Tech should have won that football game. I thought they deserved it, especially too with how physical and dominant they were up front on both sides of the football. Good football team there. Boston College, a protected rivalry there, so they're there. Louisville Cardinals, they're going to be here, obviously at home. We went down there last year. They're coming back up here. Then again, we had got Miami back on here, which is always a good, interesting game. Miami will be up here in Pittsburgh, a game that's always fun. The amount of talent they usually have on a day-in, day-out basis. Sometimes there are kryptonite. We were able to beat the limits not out of them a couple years ago. But then again, in 2021, they beat us. We had a number of those games go back and forth. NC State will obviously be at home. Obviously, that's a fun game to go to. Dave Doran, a veteran football coach. I think a damn good football coach can never get over the top and get to the ACC title game. But he's a guy that normally, besides this year, that where they really struggle because of quarterback issues, a team that usually gets 9 to 10 wins a year, and he's certainly up there. The Stanford Cardinals, obviously they'll be up. That'll be out in California. That might be a game that I actually may travel to. A new team, and a new aspect, a new opportunity to go out and see another stadium. Obviously, it's not easy to get to, but a football game that I might go to. And of course, you got at Syracuse. Obviously, we had them here. We beat the snot of them, and this year we'll be going to Syracuse next year. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. Again, I know the comments are continuing coming in right now. Let me see here. All right, yeah, I don't have any super chat questions there at all. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But yeah, obviously Pitt's really in a good position next year where, it's going to be a tough schedule, man. I think, West Virginia, still a rivalry game. I always call them a hard game, even with, them losing their really, more than half their roster to the transfer portal. That'll be a game to watch. That's going to be also on 9/13 with Rich Rodriguez coming back. That's going to be a massive game. I wouldn't even be shocked if college football, college game day makes their way there. Notre Dame will be a tough game. I still think Florida State will be a tough game there because it's at Florida State. Georgia Tech will be a difficult football game. Miami will be a difficult football game. Louisville will be a football game. So, you really right now, you've got 4, 5, 6 different games you're looking at going, man, there's some damn good teams on this schedule next year. I know it'll be fun overall to see what that looks like. A number of different good football teams there. Let me see here. Stop sharing. Overall, guys, we're already 22 minutes in here. I can talk forever with this stuff. It's too much fun. Let me see here. Oh, obviously, too, Cole Gonzalez, quarterback transfer from Western Carolina as well. I think right now Pitt's really looking for a backup quarterback or a guy that can really compete with Eli Holstein at this point. Cole Gonzalez, I know people really get upset about, certain guys coming over from Western Carolina. I think we've seen from a number of different places. Caleb Carter, offensive lineman, went to Michigan State. Obviously, Derek Simmons went to Oklahoma. Cole Gonzalez got offered there. He's supposed to go visit there. I wouldn't be shocked if it comes down to Pitt and Oklahoma. It'd be good to get another backup quarterback in there to go in there with Julian Duggar. Obviously, he's a backup quarterback right now. Obviously, Mason, the true freshman, will come in. I think he's got really high potential, but you never really want to go with a true freshman quarterback. You want to allow him to learn and not put him in major pressure situations like that. So Cole Gonzalez will be a quarterback to watch out for after he visits Oklahoma. They're certainly being aggressive in the portal and what they certainly need. Let me see here if there's anything else on X here that I missed out on. Pretty cool here. Shep Turk, offensive line recruit out of the 2025 class, was named for a player of the year by the Post-Gazette. Actually, I can share my screen here again. That'll be good to show here. Let me see. Wrong one there. Let's see here. Here we go. Which is pretty cool. Obviously, if you don't live in the Pittsburgh area, obviously the all WPIAL team, a bunch of good football players on this list. Always good to get a guy. Obviously with Pitt, you got Bradley Gompers in there. Obviously, he's still going to Duke. I know Pitt recruited him really hard, but I thought for sure he was going to flip to Michigan or Penn State. Never ended up doing it. But you look down here, obviously. Obviously got our guy here, Shep Turk, Thomas Jefferson, offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I think in reality he could have played either side of the football in Power 4, but obviously we're lucky to have him as an offensive lineman. He's got a mean streak. He is your typical guy out of the WPIAL where you look at him and you say, man, he really loves violence. Number one, when you look at guys, offensive line, they got to love violence. If they're kind of shying away from violence or sometimes not playing a full effort, you want to stay away from those guys. Not with Shep Turk. Shep Turk's going to be a hell of an offensive lineman for Pitt. Obviously helped the Jaguars win a Class A 4A championship again this year. Anytime you can get an offensive lineman or really any player out of Thomas Jefferson, Devin Danielson, defensive tackle who we got out of Thomas Jefferson, was a good football player. Obviously won Whitfield wrestling championship. Another thing too, if you can get an offensive lineman who has won in the wrestling game, but more importantly, provides an opportunity to win a championship like he did, won a Whitfield championship in wrestling last year, it's a damn good guy to have. I know Jeremy Darvaux's got to be really, really psyched up and really excited to get him overall in terms of what he's able to do. Pretty cool up here up top there. Nate Stahl won the Bill Freilich Award, given the Whitfield's top interior lineman. Those are always good to see too. Obviously, Bill Freilich, I put up a photo of him recently. Certainly miss him, man. He was a hell of a Pitt man overall. Didn't matter what it took, man. He would help out Pitt overall, no matter what it was. But obviously, too, really good there. Thomas Jefferson, offensive lineman, 6'5", 270 pounds. Give him a couple of years. In the Pitt Ironworks, he'll be over 300, probably 305. Very aggressive, being able to move, very athletic. Play at the guard position, at the center position. He can play left guard or right guard or center. We'll see where he ends up more. He's a tough physical football player. And again, anytime you can get an offensive lineman that truly embraces wrestling and wins a Whitfield championship in wrestling, that's something in itself. Good question here from Brian Thompson. Obviously, again, thank you for the super chat as well. Are there any players you're expecting to change positions next year that may impact who Pitt's targets in the portal this offseason? Brian, that's actually a really good question. I think when you look at the overall roster, when you look at Pitt, obviously, at the tight end position, I was going to say, I think Ty Diefenbach, when he was playing quarterback here, there was a lot of conversation about him moving from the quarterback position to the tight end position. He worked with tight ends early on in the year. Obviously, he went into the transfer portal. He will certainly not be moving positions. But I think technically, when you look at a number of different guys, I think I have to take a look at a list. I don't really see anybody at this point that's a very obvious standout to where they can move from the offensive side of the football to defense, or the defense to the offense, or vice versa. I think that right now they have a number of different guys where they look at overall in the previous years where you saw a guy like Dorian Johnson, where he was able to move. Obviously, Dorian Ford. Dorian Ford, the former Baldwin recruit, started on the defensive side of the football, went to guard on the offensive side. Obviously that didn't work out. I think right now when you look at Pitt's offense and defense at this point, they got pretty much solidified for where they are. I wouldn't expect anybody really to change either side of the football. It's honestly noticeable. The only one that was really there that was really talked about to me was Ty Diefenbach working with the tight ends, which may have led to the reason why he didn't play quarterback here. A lot of confusion, a lot of stuff moving around there, obviously. But I think as of right now, there is nothing that I could really point to that says, hey, there's one player that can move to one side of the football or the other that comes to mind. But I could certainly look that up and obviously bring it out to everyone here and talk about if there's anybody else that could potentially move later on. But as always, thank you, as always, for the super chat. Beyond thankful for the donation to the podcast. Let's see here. Stop sharing here. Let's take a look here. See if there's anything else. Here. Obviously, too, I think I can release to you guys here, obviously, right now. If you haven't done so, if you're over on YouTube, you can if you're over on X, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Right now, working on getting an interview with Shep Turk, getting him on the podcast. Obviously, being a commit from Pittsburgh, you got to get him on there. Also, Mason, the quarterback commit, working on to get him on here. Obviously, I think as I get a little less busy in my career here in this coming week, I think we'll be able to work something out potentially. If there's something there, we can get obviously 10, 15, 20 minutes to get them on here to really raise their brand. Obviously, they're two great young men. I've been working on that for a while. Obviously, it has not been them; it's been me. I've been the problem, which is not too rare, to say the least, with my career. But overall, we'll work to get them on there. If you haven't done so, I suggest subscribing to the channel because that's going to be the next thing in this offseason. A lot more ACC talk, a lot more conference realignment of the overall ACC landscape of what that looks like for going forward. That's going to be a lot of conversations, but also player interviews. A lot of different guys, obviously Shep Turk, Mason, those guys will come on here, but a number of different Pitt guys that we have here lined up to get on here and to start having interviews. So if you're over on X, make sure you go over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. And I think overall, someone told me today, I'll probably end up making I'm not a big Facebook guy. I'm not a big Facebook guy overall. I just don't use it. But I think I might actually start a Facebook page for Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen as well. When that happens, I'll be able to share it everywhere else. You guys can certainly give it a follow, and I'll post all my videos and stuff on there as well, along with X. So it'll be really good. But then again, thank you again, Brian, for the super chat as always. JJ, did I see you at my football therapy class? I know you did not, but guess what? It's pretty crazy here when we have 2 straight days of live streams. We'll be having more videos dropping of North Carolina, private equity. Obviously, again, if you did not see early on this week, we'll go into a little bit more of it. I won't talk about it too much tonight because I have a video dropping, a recorded video for you guys, a recorded show. Private equity, CNBC released a ranking of the top 75 college football teams in order of teams that are ranked the highest to the lowest. But the top 75, Pitt came in at number 42 in the country, 42nd in the country overall in terms of value. CNBC talked about with private equity trying to get involved with college athletics and college football. It's pretty good overall. Tells you where it's at. And then, overall between the 4 different categories between the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12, it landed in that order. The SEC was number 1 with $13.3 billion in an evaluation. The Big Ten was $13.2 billion, which, that's just kind of because of the TV deal, which is why they're that high. I think we're watching in live time where the Big Ten is really not that extravagant. I've talked about it, and you'll hear it in this video that I drop. Obviously, the Big Ten not winning they've won 3 national championships in the last, 24 years. Ohio State twice and Michigan once. That's kind of where they've been at it to this point. But obviously, the ACC, the Big Ten was SEC was $13.3 billion. The Big Ten was $13.2. The ACC was $9.6 billion. And then the Big 12 was ranked 4th out of the Power 4 at $6.7 billion. I'll be having that video drop to talk about that. Go over a certain number of football teams. Obviously, if you're wondering, 42nd in the country, number 9 in the ACC overall, number 9 out of 17 schools if you include Notre Dame in the conference. Obviously, I think in the Big 12, Pitt would have been ranked 3rd or 4th by my rankings that I saw. We'll talk about more about that. So overall, there's a lot of value with Pitt football, and I think the more and more the program gets involved with revenue sharing, obviously, with revenue sharing does pass, you'll see a lot more conversation around that, Pitt being competitive. Obviously, you saw Chris Bickle talk about that, being at the top of their game overall nationally, competing nationally. Lucky to have a guy like Pitt, Chris Bickle in terms of involved with Alliance 412. Obviously, the general manager of Alliance 412, or if I call it Pitt, Doug Whaley, the general manager at Alliance 412. And then you also have executives like Jeff Goldberg and John Pelusi that are also there. So we got a lot of good guys there. Will, there are a couple guys. There's 68 Power 4 teams overall, but I think they had Memphis in there. They had Oregon State, Washington State in there. Those 3 teams that were in there, so that gets you to 71. And then there's 4 more teams in there. I can't remember the other 4 teams, but it's in the video. I go through the whole entire article, rankings and whatnot, talking about where they are. And so when that video drops, you guys can see that overall. I did a lot of work on that one, which is really good overall. If you're a Pitt fan, you got to be happy about that. You're a top 42 team in the country, and it continues to build overall when Pitt continues to win, build more value, and it can only help the university even more as we go forward, and especially too with college football the way it is. It'll be fun to see where Pitt goes because Pitt has a lot of value for where they are. But it'll be funny to see where Pitt goes in terms of, where they are in the rankings. Where coaches retiring, obviously Wake Forest was towards the bottom, being the smallest Power 4 team in the country. Obviously, Dave Clawson, the head football coach at Wake Forest, if you did not see, he retired recently. Obviously, talking about the stages of just where college football is. He cared about the university. In my opinion, I thought Wake Forest did a hell of a job in hiring Coach Dickert up at Washington State. He's going to go from Washington State to Wake Forest. I thought that was a damn good hire. Really impressed with them overall. So I think from top to bottom, when you look at the overall aspect of where college football is, there's been, again, I'm going into another video that I'm going to post, but parity across college football is second to none at this point. You look at the parity from top to bottom. The SEC can certainly claim number 1 because they have the most national championships. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what you're seeing is that really the Big Ten and the ACC are a lot more combined than what people think. And then you have the Big 12 really sitting at fourth. You see the evaluations that are currently there. And certainly, too, you look at the ACC, the overall brands in the ACC, there's massive brands. And I think, Sean McDonough talked about it on the actual national stage with Greg McElroy when watching Notre Dame face off with Indiana. This whole facade of where, you look at the Big Ten being ranked in the top two, maybe in the top two in terms of revenue because of the TV contracts. But when you look at overall results in college football, I mean, they were left out of the college football playoff a number of different times in the Power Four, in the Power Five era, when there came to the top four teams in the college football playoff. Clemson shut out Ohio State, 33-0 at one point. Obviously, Clemson has numerous opportunities where they dominated, beating Alabama, 42-14 in the national championship game. Florida State has won a national title in the BCS college football era as well. They've made it to the playoff. So a number of different things that you look at overall, but when it comes to the overall aspect of college football, there's more parity now because of the transfer portal and NIL. And, I go into it in my video as well, the propaganda that's being pushed out by ESPN, the SEC to protect them at all costs is just straight bullshit. I mean, the stuff going on with Kirk Herbstreit right now, talking about how it's not about wins anymore. It's about looking at each individual team. There might be a team that has, they went 9-3, but their schedule might have been harder. I got news for you. If you're a Power 4 football team and you're 11-1, your ass is in the playoff. I'm sorry. If they're not in the playoff, then that's bullshit. Especially, too, when the Big Ten plays 9 conference games, you got 3 non-con games. I'm sorry. I mean, I understand that the schedule overall, you look at Indiana, was pretty easy. There wasn't really many tests. They obviously had Indiana as a test. They had Ohio State as a test. But overall, they still went 11-1. There has to be a guaranteed system where you go 11-1 in a football season, the Power 4 conference, your ass better be in the playoff. It still killed me not to see Miami in there. I'd love to see Cam Ward and that Miami team up against Penn State. I think SMU still deserved it. You can't penalize them and drop them out of the playoff when they're in a conference championship game. I think overall there will come a time when there's no longer conference championships, no more conference championship games. Maybe the college football season goes back 2 more weeks, starts in August. Then you have, instead of a 12-team playoff, you got a 14-team college football playoff. There's a whole number of different aspects, but I think where we're going at with college football, and I'm seeing a lot of Big Ten people, bitch and complain about where, the game's going, where, everything's being favored to the SEC. Well, to the Big Ten fans, you're a part of this problem as well. Genetics 56 talked about it today, which I thought was absolute just bullshit, talking about how, they're doing everything they can to save the SEC and propaganda. Well, no offense, the Big Ten is part of that problem as well. They've caused that shitstorm from the beginning. And we've been saying that here, especially on this podcast, where it's been just a blatant brand of propaganda. And now the Big Ten teams are saying, well, we don't want to work with the SEC anymore. Well, not really sure you have a real choice there. You have ESPN, Fox, and CBS all colliding at this point, with Fox and CBS really having a hold of the Big Ten, and ESPN having a hold of the SEC. It's kind of where we are at this point. But at the end of the day, there's more parity across college football than there is anywhere else. This is probably the most exciting time in college football, besides the spewing of propaganda from the ESPN, Fox Sports, all those it's bullshit. College football is in a good state of competitiveness right now, but there needs to be more guardrails around college football in terms of NIL, revenue sharing, and also to the transfer portal. In my opinion, I think the transfer portal should be open one time a year. Not in December when teams are in the playoff. I think that's bullshit. But you look at overall the academic calendar, because you're dealing with universities. I think at the end of the spring camp, that's when the portal should be open. Or at least maybe in the middle of spring camp. After the first 2 weeks of spring camp, some guys know they're not going to have a shot. You can open the portal then for 2 weeks, have guys dip in there and head to their new school in the summer. That's how I think it should be. There's no multiple free agencies in the National Football League. The National Football League has contracts. They also, too, people talk about, well, coaches can go back and forth and choose different schools. Well, guess what? Like we've learned anywhere else in college football coaches have buyouts. Schools have to pay and purchase those buyouts to get those coaches to go to their school. There's contracts. That kind of stuff needs to happen more and more and more. The day and age of no more contracts and just blatant, just going out and doing whatever they want is bullshit. Also, too, collective bargaining agreements. There needs to be a collective bargaining agreement between the players and basically in college football, the NCAA or whoever gets involved. Me personally, a guy that I would want to see at the commissioner level would be a guy like Dave Clawson, who actually is looking out for the interest of college football. I think he'd be a great commissioner. I think he overall would look at the stage of college football, NIL, transfer portal, what's best for the universities, the players, and the coaches. All that stuff goes hand in hand at this point. Also, I think you're potentially going to see head football coaches and their salaries drop down because schools are going to be paying more to the players. Revenue sharing from 22, I think the cap in 2025, if it gets passed in Congress in April, it'll officially start in July, will be $22.5 million, obviously across all sports, not just football. It's across all sports. I bet you it'd be about 90% of that funds will go towards football. I know from a top to bottom standpoint, obviously every school is going to look to flush that money towards football because that's what generates money for the university, but also, two, funds all the non-revenue sports at all these universities as well. I'd imagine on-campus stadium will increase the valuation a lot, but these metrics are on brand for PEs taking over college football. Will, to your point, yeah, I still don't see that changing. I think, from everybody I've talked to, Joan Gable has personally called it a necessity for Pitt to get their own place. I wouldn't mind it. I think that there's a lot of good opportunities in place. Alan Green, obviously being on board, being able to drive revenue, building revenue, corporate sponsorships, obviously a talent fee for season ticket holders, including myself. I don't mind it if it's going towards NIL. Alliance 412 will come in-house with the university as well. Obviously, Chris Bickle, all them guys working together. There's just a number of different factors going forward, but I think that will still be a thing. I think in 2026, 2027, you hear an announcement possibly to build a stadium because from what I'm hearing, just from downtown, from people that I know personally, between just real estate, overall finances, overall with everything going on with the Steelers, I expect about a roughly $400 to $500 million renovation to Acrisure Stadium. I expect that to go down because all these stadiums are going through a bunch of stuff right now. Obviously, if you don't remember, David Morehouse, who was working for the Pittsburgh Penguins, was really involved with their new stadium and their new arena. They got the PPG Paints Arena, but also to their practice facility. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Steelers move from the south side to somewhere in Cranberry, creating their own practice facility, building something new. But I think the biggest thing they're looking forward to right now is the massive upgrades they're probably going to build with Acrisure Stadium. That's all going to go down the pipe because obviously the lease is up in 2030. So there's a whole number of different things going on the south side. Obviously, too, on the North Shore, you're seeing a lot of developments. Obviously, too, the lot towards, I think it's Gate C on the Carnegie Sign Center side. The Carnegie Sign Center is expanding towards the hotel, even more on that side. On the other side, there's a gravel parking lot where all the students are. Apparently, that's supposed to be retail, so that's taking out all parking right there as well. So there's just all kinds of stuff going on in terms of just real estate. That's in the world that I'm in. And a lot of people that I talk to, you just hear it over and over again through a number of different attorneys that we work with. There's a lot of stuff just in the works. And I think that overall you hear it in Pitt's 10-year plan, which has been an enactment since, I want to say, what was it? I think 2019, 2020, 2019, I think that plan came out. So all that stuff was going down there as well. Steven, don't worry, you'll get an all Big Ten championship game. I highly doubt it, brother. I can tell you this. I've got Notre Dame beating Georgia because Georgia's without their starting quarterback, and I think Notre Dame's just going to absolutely wallop Penn State. Notre Dame can actually score points. I think they're aggressive on offense. They certainly have it, but I think there's a lot to be desired for Penn State's offense. They got to get better, especially in a neutral site game. Also, too, I think Boise State's going to be riled up for that football game. I think for them being told they can't win that game, obviously, too, Ashlyn Jenny, the best running back in college football, that's going to be a game to watch. We've seen numerous upsets. And obviously, too, when it comes to James Franklin in big games, James Franklin's got to prove it first. He's got the first game down. He's got that, a little bit of that monkey off his back to where he's actually won a big game, obviously the first playoff game, but he's got a long way to go. And the amount of dumb calls that James Franklin had in that game, for instance, going for it on his own 25-yard line, really trying to get SMU back in the football game was utter stupidity. That's kind of why James Franklin gets the name that he does. I was watching that live. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how stupid that call was. College football equivalent to the NIT would probably have more excitement than bowls. Yeah, you also too. You just got to watch. I mean, especially to the playoff. What does that look like? I think potentially you could do it, but depends on how many teams make it to that bowl game. Maybe if you have a top 14, maybe if you have the top 14 teams, then the next 14, which I guess would be 28 teams. Your next ones would go into that next category. But how many teams would do that? It's not like you're winning a national title. I don't know. I think bowl games would still be the way to go. I mean, I guess a playoff like that would probably generate more money, but you're not going to win a national title or nothing like that. It would kind of be like I guess you're right, like the NIT, I guess. But how many people would want to be involved in that? That would be the question. All right, let's see here. Are there any more super chats? Obviously, we're 45 minutes in here, folks. All right. I don't see any more super chats, guys. We still went 45 minutes tonight. Obviously, if you've not done so, if you're over on X, head over to YouTube. Jake Stark here. With the arrival of the college football playoff and transfer portal, do you see the bowl games continuing to exist? They were already pointless. Now the top 12 teams don't play, and there are a lot of players opting out. Potentially, man, I think they might go away, but also to the bowls, they want to keep it relevant because they need to make money as well. So we'll see. But I think they're starting to become more and more pointless as it is. But guys, again, if you've not done so, subscribe to the channel. If you're over on X, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Like this video, it helps out with the algorithm. Also, share this on Facebook. I know, obviously, Pitt Panther Fanatics. Also, too, Real Pitt Football Talk does a great job. Pitt Family for Life does a great job. They do a lot of good stuff. So, again, I appreciate, as always, supporting the podcast. Always appreciate the super chats again. Brian, thank you so much for the super chat here tonight as well. Guys, that's another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. I appreciate you guys, as always and forever. Hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. And, of course, happy holidays. Maybe do a surprise Christmas Day live stream. We'll see. But as always and forever, hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys next time.